Hi, and welcome to How to Grow Your Business with Kevin Willett. As you can see, I got my buddy Steve DeVries with us. Steve's a business coach over at Focal Point. Good morning, Steve. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. Good morning.
So, before I have today's question, tell us a little bit about yourself and your business, my friend.
Sure, thank you. So Steve DeVries, Focal Point Business Coaching, and that's what I do. I'm a business coach. So I help my clients get what they want from their business. Sometimes they have a strategy that, or maybe they don't have a strategy, but they have something in place that isn't going to allow them to get where they want to go, and they just don't see that. Sometimes they have people challenges in terms of leading people and managing people. Sometimes they're not making the money that they want to make. Sometimes they simply just want time off and they don't know how to break away from that small business. So I tend to work with small and medium-sized business leaders, particularly in the B2B and manufacturing space. Sometimes a B2B service provider, occasionally a nonprofit. But my job is to help these business leaders grow their organization, get where they want to go, and reduce the stress as much as possible while doing it.
So, Steve, today I want to talk about attracting talent. We were joking
Yeah.
before the show. We both read the same article yesterday. We'll leave the company out of it. But they're a very well-known company, and their senior employees were coming back saying that the younger people don't want to work here because they weren't paying them the same wage levels. They didn't have the same benefits as some of the senior people had. And those people end up working another full-time job just to try to make ends meet. I
Mhm.
guess when I read it, I was kind of taken back because when I think of manufacturing jobs, I think of union jobs, people making really good wages and living good lives. That's not always the case, though, right? In manufacturing.
It's definitely not the case. There's a lot of manufacturers out there who tend to think that they have to control all costs and they think about their employees as nothing more than another cost. And so I'm here to bang the drum for the going the other way. It's employees aren't a cost. Employees allow your business to go where you want it to go. And a weak employee base, an unhappy employee base, is not going to translate into, a successful business over the long run in this day and age. It might have worked, 100 years ago, and that business that you referred to that we were talking about, has been around a lot longer than 100 years. And their philosophy, at least early on in that story that we were sharing, was to pay their workers better than anybody else in the industry and maybe to give them benefits better than anybody else in the industry. And I try to tell my clients the exact same thing. Your business, and I've experienced this, right? So I've run businesses for 25 years before I started working as a coach. And what I can tell you is that a business only goes as far as your employees allow it to go. If they're happy, if they're engaged, if they're satisfied with their compensation and benefits, your business on the whole is going to go a lot further than a company whose workforce isn't happy, isn't engaged. And so it's not always about paying top dollar, but you need to be at least, in the top 50 to 75% if you want to have a fighting chance. Because nowadays employees talk, right? They talk with each other on what they're making. They talk to people in the same industry that maybe work in other companies. They're taking notes, they're comparing. And guess what? The people who are getting good pay, the people who are getting good benefits, the people who are going to work generally satisfied that they're part of a culture and they feel engaged and important, right? The owners, the management, they treat people with respect. They have their best interests in mind. They are aligning the goals of the employee with the goals of the company. Those are all marks of a really good organization. And guess what? People in that company are recruiting people from your company. If that's not you, if that's not your business, they're getting recruited right out from underneath your nose. And then what happens? You've got this turnstile, right? You've got people coming in, they're working for you for 6 months, and they're out the door because there's a better place to work. And it's not even close. And so all the money that you think you've saved, you're spending now to recruit replacements, to onboard people, to train them. They're not effective when they first come on board, typically, unless you overpay for them, right? Which wasn't your model in the first place. So now you're getting cheap employees again. You're training them again. You're spending more time dealing with new employees and training them than you are growing the business. And so eventually you get stuck. And so all the good talent ends up at your competitor, right? Or, and when I say competitor, it could be a direct competitor, or in this case, you're competing with everybody in your general area for talent. It's no secret that there's a lack of talent to go around for all the job openings that we want. So how do you combat that? Well, it's not going to be by paying the lowest wage and trying to squeeze every dime you can out of that line of on your P&L. It's got to be more about investing in your people. And so the things that I mentioned earlier, that should be your top priority for your workforce to get them engaged and to stay engaged. Competitive pay, good benefits, give them opportunities for growth and training. Those are all things that people want to see. Good culture, right? Nice, clean environment, right? Get people engaged, let them learn about the business, give them opportunities, or at least give them an opportunity to create opportunities for themselves, right? You've got to be thinking about your workforce not as an expense, but as an asset. And when you have an asset, what do? You try to maximize it. And with this case, human capital, right? That's the catchphrase nowadays for human resources. You've got to treat your people as if they're the most important things in your business because guess what? They are.
Yep. Steve, I like that you mentioned it's more than just pay because
Mhm.
I've had people leave, oh, I'm going here because I'm getting this insignificant increase. And then they get there and they realize, wow, the culture is totally different. We're not treated this kindly as we were at my last job. I
Mhm.
get it. I was young once too, and it was all about the money, like just whoever's going to pay me and, I'm going to go work there. And then you get to, you're like, that was a mistake.
Mhm.
So pay is important, but it's the whole picture, as you mentioned, right?
100%, right? So if you're getting paid top dollar, so we'll approach this from the employee side first. If you're getting paid top dollar, but you can't take any time off, and you're stressed out every single day, maybe your benefits aren't great, maybe your employer is not giving you good training opportunities. They say, listen, I'm paying you top dollar, go produce, and they throw you in the deep end, and you're not ready everyone loses, right? And on the employer's side of things, if you aren't paying top dollar, you really got to think about how to make that up, right? If it's top 50 to 75%, okay, but make it easy for people to use their paid time off, right? Make sure that you understand what their situation is and you can support them, right? So one of the ways that I did that as a small business leader, I would literally, in every place that I've worked, I have walked the shop, I have walked the facility, I get to know my people, I build rapport with them, right? I understand what their needs are, what their concerns are, what their life is about. And so this is where we talk about, you talked about attracting. Now we're going to talk about retention for a second. How do you retain people? So let's say you're paying competitively. Let's say you've got decent benefits. You're aligning, you're giving people a growth path, right? Is that enough? Well, there's one last thing that you can do to build loyalty. And I've done this and I've seen it in action. What you've got to do is make that connection with your people. You can't just be the person up in the office in the ivory tower, right? You've got to go out and you've got to engage with your workforce. So when you give them all the other things, right, that a lot of other employers out there are trying to do, this is where you differentiate yourself. You get to know them. You become a part of their world. You build rapport, you build loyalty. And when you do that, they're not going to leave you for another buck an hour, right? Because they feel connected to you, they feel connected to the business, they're part of something. And particularly in the direct labor workforce, I've seen this firsthand. They just don't want to feel like a number. They want to know that they matter. And the best way to do that is to engage with them as a leader in your organization, right? Treat everybody with respect, right? Understand, their spouse's names, their kids' names, right? Where do they like to go on vacation? What do they like to do outside of work? Have a relationship with them. And when you have that and you have all those other things, not only are you going to make a name for yourself as the best employer in the area, but you're also going to keep those folks.
Steve, if people have questions about this topic, what's the best way to reach out to you, my friend?
I always like to steer people to my LinkedIn page first. My profile is Steve DeVries 7551 on LinkedIn. You can go to my website, stevedevries.focalpointcoaching.com, or just give me a call, 603-277-3288.
Steve, I appreciate you taking a few minutes to call into the show. And as always, thanks for being my friend.
My pleasure. Thank you, Kevin.